G'day everyone, we are back and today we're going to have some more fun with the Cinema 4D cloth simulation. Lucky for us, the new update features Vertex Map support for the cloth balloon effect. In this video, we'll explore this update by making some fun, inflated sofa cushions. To kick things off, I have created a cube and I have adjusted the size to be 700 millimeters in length, 350 millimeters in height, and 650 millimeters wide. I've chosen these dimensions because it's about the average size of a sofa base cushion. Also, just to note, my project scale and units are set to millimeters because this is what I'm kind of used to when I'm doing industrial design projects. Now we will add a subdivision surface, holding Alt to add this to our cube. This will increase the amount of geometry. The smaller the geometry, the more detail and crinkles in the balloon simulation. Optimized meshes are best made up of uniformly sized quads, so we just want to make sure that all of these quads are about the same size, and to me that looks just fine. Now we will make this cushion editable. We can do this two ways. We can hit C on the keyboard, like so, or we can right click on the subdivision surface and click Make Editable. Next, we will add more geometry near the seams. This is where an upholsterer would position the stitching seams between each of the fabric panels. To do this, we'll go to our edge select mode, come down to our loop path cut, and just select this path there, and then on the bottom panel as well. Perfect. Let's set up this sofa cushion for shading in the future. To do this, we'll go to the UV editing tab. We will hit set UV from projection, move to our loop selection tool, and select the seams that we just created. Go UV unwrap, select the bottom panel, UV unwrap, and we'll select one of the side panels. To do this, I will go into our path selection tool, and UV unwrap. Now we have the top panel, the base panel, and the side panel, as it would be made in real life. The last step for this is to make sure that all of our panels are somewhat aligned. If you're going to have a fabric along this edge, it would be a little bit wobbly. So let's go to the UV packing tab and just hit apply on rasterized. Now let's scale these seams in just slightly. Go back to our loop selection tool. I just hit shift to select both of them. P to scale. Make sure that my soft selection is turned off and scale in just slightly. Now let's go back into the modeling tab. And this cushion's looking a little bit uniform. So we can turn soft selection on, go into our point select mode, and let's adjust the radius to say 200 millimeters. A little bit more. 400. Hit E, and let's move this up just slightly. You can do this however you like, however puffy you want your cushion to be. All right. That looks fine to me. Let's go back into model mode, and I want to add a little bit of color to this. I'm going to add a standard Cinema 4D shader for redshift and just drag it onto our object. And I'll change the color to blue. Now let's make a whole family of cushions. I'll hit Alt and create a cloner object. Mode, honeycomb. And let's just go on the y-axis. This means that the object will be distributed along the X and Z planes. Let's change the count width to 6 and height to 3. We can increase the size width and height to separate them. And create some offset variation. To customize the rotation of each of these cloned objects, we can create a plane object. And we'll go to the Fields tab, and we'll create a random field. We'll change this to max. Go back to our parameter tab. Turn off the position and just tick rotation. Let's make it 135. We can also tick scale. This will make each of our cushions a different width and length. Now let's go back to the Fields tab and adjust the seat until we get a position that we like. Now, it looks like our cushions are a little bit big and too close to each other. So we'll go back to our cloner tag and just increase the distance. Perfect. To control the balloon effect, we'll add a vertex map. Vertex maps save a value between 0 and 1 for each of an object's points, and it can be controlled by fields. So we'll select our cloner, go to tags, other tags, vertex map. Now we will add a freeze, select the mode to grow, and increase our radius to 200 millimeters. Next, we'll create a spherical field and increase the size. We'll make sure that we have our timeline viewed at the bottom. Move our field to the start of our cushions and just keyframe the x-axis. Now let's jump to 160 frames and move our spherical field to the other end and hit keyframe. Now let's have a look at this animation. Now for the fun part, let's add our balloon tag. So we'll select our cloner, tags, simulation, balloon. We'll drag our vertex map into the map and we'll change our expansion time to 15 frames just to make them explode a little bit faster. And we'll change our overpressure to 2 for now. Secondly, we'll go to our Mix Animation tab, turn on with pins, and drag the vertex map into the map. Now let's go into our surface settings and change the bendiness to about 20. This just allows the cloth to bend a little bit more around the mesh. And let's make our mass 1. Maybe we want them to be a little bit lighter, so let's change it to 0.1. Before we go ahead and simulate the balloons, let's go to our project settings and our simulation tab. My settings are at substeps 20. So this parameter is crucial for the precision of the simulation. The higher the value, the more precise the calculation will be, and the more precisely the collision detection will be. Although this comes with correspondingly longer calculation times. Smoothing iterations, we only really need to use this parameter if it is necessary, as it can result in some side effects such as changing stiffness, so we'll leave it at 2. Dampening, I have at 1. Higher values will make the simulation look correspondingly more like it's underwater. And collision passes, generally speaking, the values should be increased carefully if collisions are problematic. But I think for this scene, we don't have many collisions, so we can leave it at 2. I'm going to go to the scene tab and just make sure that gravity is set to 0, because we're going to create our own gravity object. Next, let's create a floor plane. We'll increase the size of the object to about 15 meters by 15 meters, or in my case, 15,000 millimeters. We will add a collider tag to this plane. And we'll go into our front view, making sure that our display is on lines or hidden lines. And let's just move our plane so it's below all of the objects. That looks good. Okay, let's test this simulation. To help us understand what the final output will look like, let's set up a camera. I'm just going to add a standard redshift camera. And we'll zero out some of the coordinates. We'll change the focal length to 50. And the focus to, about 5,000 millimeters. Next, let's change our view here to our redshift camera. Customizing the gravity will give us more control over the cushions moving up and down in space. For this animation, we are trying to make them look like they inflate with helium, let out the air, and then fall to the floor. So let's first press Shift C and just search for gravity. It looks like a little apple. We're going to change the acceleration or mode to force. This takes in the object's mass into account, and the heavier the mass, the less likely it is going to be affected by the modifier. So let's animate this. I'm going to start at frame 0 and make the acceleration 0. Next, we'll go to frame 125 and make the acceleration 800. That's going to push the cushions back down to the ground. Right click, animation, show track. Let's have a look. Cool. Now let's add some more interest to this gravity animation. I'm going to go to frame 40, make the gravity 0. Then I'll go frame 45 and make it negative 90. That's going to push the balloons further up into the air. Next, I'll go to frame 120 and make the gravity 0. That's going to hold them up in the air and then push them back down when it gets to this frame 125. Great. Now we're going to keyframe the overpressure in the balloon tag. So we'll go to the balloon and we'll go to frame 0 and we'll make the pressure 2.3. And then we'll go to frame 80 and make the overpressure 1.6. And finally, we'll go to frame 83 and make the overpressure 1.03, just a tiny little bit over a sort of normal amount of pressure. Let's click this automatic mode here to show all of our animations. And let's have a look. Great. I think all we need to do now is just speed up the spherical field. So we'll just move this to about here. So now our spherical field finishes at frame 100. Let's try again.
Thanks for watching. I'm always keen to hear your feedback on my tutorials and what I should share next. Thanks again, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.